Hey, what's going on, guys? Aarava here, and welcome back to my Let's Talk F1 2018 for the car launches, and this one for the Red Bull RB14, the third car to be unveiled for the 2018 F1 season. And here is the striking new Red Bull for 2018 in a test livery, apparently, in a very striking one, camo style, with some blue tech camo there. And I say apparently test livery because on the press release it says it's a testing livery, and apparently the new slicker paint will be unveiled at Catalonia on Monday for testing, but they've changed all the social media branding to the camo style. It's a lot of effort for just a one-off livery for a couple of days of media, but it is Red Bull. They're pretty much the leaders in good marketing these days in F1, so you wouldn't be surprised if they're doing all this effort just for a little bit of marketing for 1 week, and then they're going to do a bit more of a, I guess you could say, natural Red Bull livery with an actual Red Bull on the car or whatnot. But I mean, plenty of people are going on about on Twitter, tweeting Red Bull to say just keep it the way it is. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Red Bull should maybe keep it like this for this season, or do you not mind them showing up to Catalonia with a bit of a different, slicker paint? I'm kind of half and half. I love it. It's a very nice, sleek camo that's kind of understated, but also also jumps out at you due to the silver versus blackish blue kind of camo underneath all the silver writing and the bull graphics and whatnot. But at the same time, I'm sure whatever they change it to, a Red Bull livery has always been nice. I don't think there's ever, in my opinion, there's never been a bad Red Bull livery, to be honest. So it's going to be enjoyable either way. In the past, they have gone with a testing livery. The last time was in 2015 with a Dazzle Camo. Now, they did the Dazzle Camo to really hide a lot of stuff, and it could be the same way, trying to hide some of the little nuances in the car, basically, because if you look a little bit closer around this car, it is a very aggressive car, especially around that side pod area, which is the major big talking point about this car, along with maybe some interesting things to do with the suspension arm. But yeah, we're going to get into brightening up the car and then taking a look a bit more closely at the actual bits, the aero bits on this car. But do let me know in the comments below what you think of the livery. Should they keep it or should they not? But let's get into it then with the first picture here, angled from the front, and we're going to take a look firstly at the front area and the suspension arms. Very interesting suspension arms in terms of the way they join the chassis. It's kind of, the chassis almost comes out a little bit to meet the actual suspension arm, and then both the left and right arms have kinks in them and kind of bend slightly to actually accommodate the geometry and where it connects to the front wheels, essentially. And they're angled and kinked in a way, all to benefit airflow and aero. So kinks are a compromise of getting better aero and airflow through the suspension arms, and the only way they've been able to do it is due to the natural way now the tyres are a little bit spaced out wider this year compared to previous years, and that's all in the benefit to try and channel and shoot air into what is, if we move on to the back of the car and to the side pod inlets, the tiniest side pod inlets you will ever see. So small. These inlets basically just aren't there. These are probably going to be the smallest side pods you see in 2018. Red Bull have, in classic fashion, Red Bull style, the goats really of car body shapes and the sleekest designs ever, have gone with the tiniest side pod inlets ever and the tiniest and tightest bodywork around the side pods as they get to the back of the car. I'm sure they are probably working very hard, and they better be pretty damn confident in their cooling strategy for how the radiators are set up, and I'm sure maybe they've been kind of helped out maybe a little bit by the way they've been able to package the Renault power unit, but they have gone so sleek. It's kind of almost like harking back to when they went uber tight in the 2014 car, and obviously they had issues then. In the 2014 car, they had to actually open up some side body panels to kind of let some cool air through and stop it from catching fire. So we'll see. They must be pretty damn confident, but we will see for sure in testing if it holds up, because damn, these side pods are sleek as hell. The shape is obviously that standard Coke bottle shape, but as you get to the top side of the side pod, you can just see the way it curves inwards so much from the bottom, and it's almost like some of the older Red Bull cars. If I hopefully bring up some pictures now of some of the older Red Bulls from back in the day, it's almost kind of mimicking that in a way. So they've kind of gone to the past from some inspiration there. Obviously, when the power units were V8s and were a little bit less bulky, maybe in terms of the cooling and the amount of electronics they had and the batteries and whatnot, you used to be able to really kink in the engine cover. But now it looks like they're really pushing the boundaries of how they're doing that. And also, that's going to be a huge aero benefit because it just means a lot more space to work with the barge boards, with the side pod walls, what have you. Obviously, from the last video on the Williams car, I still don't know what to bloody call these things, but the side pod walls, you have the winglets coming out the chassis that are just in front of the side pod inlets. All these things now can be manipulated a little bit better, and there's just more space to work with, essentially, and more space for the air just to go through to the back of the car. And obviously this Coke bottle shape and the really kinking in is all in benefit to get as much air flowing through to the inside of the rear wing or the outside of the rear wing, in between the spaces of the rear wing and the rear tyre. In terms of the actual barge boards and the side pod walls, if you will, if we move on to different angles, you can clearly see very much an evolution of what they had last year, almost mimicking a little bit the Mercedes style we saw in terms of the actual side pod wall itself, rather than mimicking the Ferrari style. I think when they introduced it in Singapore last year, it was kind of a mock-up of what Ferrari did, whereas now this year it's kind of evolved into more of a mocking up what Mercedes almost did with that side pod, kind of the 4 different splits and the way they're attached neatly with just a little bit of metal work there to keep them all together. And then the barge boards themselves, not a copy of Mercedes or Ferrari, just an evolution of their own concept of, these little delicate subtle slits, no dagger concepts like the Mercedes guys, just subtle little slits. Obviously Red Bull go for a lot of aero, so it's not unusual for them not to have a lot of dagger kind of concepts, a lot of slits, because they don't really mind having a bit of drag on the car, because they try and gain all their time in the corners, let the chassis and the bodywork do the talking, and then they try and make up for it with maybe skinnier front wings or rear wings in terms of the engine power and the straight line speed. But of course, I guess them and McLaren and Renault are hoping the Renault power unit's going to make a step up, and from what we've heard so far in pre-season, in terms of over the winter, there are kind of talks of Renault are going to make that next step up. That's going to be positive for them. So obviously Red Bull are confident they can just go with the usual strategy that they've gone for so many years now, just plain aero. From the side-on view in green now, just trying to show you what they're trying to do. So the suspension arms, like I talked about, kinking and curving to make this aero work, is basically they're trying to get that straightened up, angled kind of interface where it joins the chassis to try and shoot that air to that tiny inlet. Because it's so small, they basically have a smaller hit target, so they have to try and be a bit more precise of how they're jetting that air into that side pod inlet. So trying to do some clever stuff with the suspension to make that work, and then you've got all that free space to work with the barge boards and the side pod. Just little things, the usual blown wheel nut, we've seen that, nothing new there from Red Bull. S-duct as well, classic way they did it from last year really, so just an evolution back onto the 2018 car with the same inlet being a little bit further up the car. They've also gone with that same kind of open nose, which is actually going to stop a stagnation point happening at the front of the nose. The suppression of a bigger stagnation point at the front of the nose is going to aid air being pushed sideways, left and right of the actual nose cone itself, and going underneath the car to eventually the underneath kind of barge board winglets you have, and work that to all the underside aero, and then eventually obviously towards the barge board. So nothing new there, that they had that from last year, and obviously it worked for them. So if you move on from the side view though to the side pod, I've tried to paint in yellow lines the kind of almost geometry that's, you can't really subtly see it there. That's the whole point of maybe the camo livery, is you can't really see the outlines necessarily. That's why they went with the Dazzle Camo back in 2015, because they wanted to hide the kind of lines and geometry of the body shape. But you can clearly see they've only got a tiny bit of an undercut on the inlet towards the underside middle part of the R of the Red Bull sponsorship. They've got that undercut, that kind of one line I got in the middle there. And then for the rest of it, it's all very flat and just abruptly kinks upwards and really tucks in and sucks in there. And all of that is going to be in benefit for air to curve round to, and all of that is going to be in benefit to curve that air round to the rear end, to the diffuser, to the rear wing. Obviously, when air is moving that fast, it basically follows the curve of the bodywork as if it was a liquid almost. So the tighter that they can get that, obviously the car, when it moves very fast through the high-speed corners, it's going to be absolutely perfect for them to sucker down that car and have that classic Red Bull time gain in the corners. If we look on the front view on, again, just illustrating what they're going for that suspension, so that kink, you can see what they're going to try and do is jet air into that very small inlet. And speaking about that very small inlet, once again, move to the left-hand side, and you can now finally see it in all its glory. Like, look how tiny that is. If you compare that back to the Williams car, which has the double inlet of the Ferrari style, same with the Haas. We'll see what Ferrari and Mercedes come up with, obviously, but I would put a lot of money that this is going to be the tiniest inlet you see of the entire grid. And just look at all that space in red. Just look at all that space. Such tiny side pods. It's really, for me, it's just a big kind of car aero nerd kind of just nerding moment, really, to be honest, just looking at how tiny that is. It's just awesome to see how sleek they've got it. They've gone with the very simplistic looking top winglet like they did last year, but obviously it kind of works for them. They're going for the very less complex vortex generators that are uprights you usually see on the top of the chassis, and just opting for this very simple chiseled winglet, which obviously they've crafted and they know exactly what they want to do with it. And, you know, they're kind of continuing the evolution from last year, especially at the very tail end of last year, where it's, you know, simple looking aero maybe compared to other teams, but it's effective aero, and it means the actual chassis shape itself is just very efficient and, you know, does the job for. So pretty much those are the huge talking points of the Red Bull car. I'll zoom in a little bit and show you the finer details so you can just have a look there, but very much an evolution of last year's car, with obviously the biggest change though being the side pod itself, with the side pod inlets and the actual side pod shape. That's the major change from last year, but the side pod barge boards and everything like that, as I said, evolution. Front wing, rear wing doesn't change too much. You won't see, apart from maybe the smaller teams like Sauber, Haas we've seen, Williams as well, you know, the smaller, you know, midfield to lower end teams, you'll see big changes in the front wings maybe to catch up with the bigger teams, but the bigger teams have already got to that point where they're reaching a point where everyone's kind of converging, so there's not going to be a lot of change on the front wing or the rear wing in terms of major aero gains they're going to make there. It's all about that kind of reconfiguration of the barge board area in the inlet and the side pod area, because that looks to be the biggest gain for all the teams really this year. So like I said at the beginning of the video, guys, let me know what you think of the Red Bull RB14. Let me know what you think of the livery. I would say also the way they've done the liveries, they've done it so well, and it looks like such a slick car that, you know, on Twitter, no one is talking about the halo. It's kind of just shrouded in there, you know, black on the black and blue. It just kind of almost disappears when you quickly look at it, and, yeah, they've done a great job on it. So, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing it for the entire season. There is the kind of argument that, depending on what Toro Rosso do, you know, is that silver ball going to clash with the silver ball of the Toro Rosso? So that's why it's probably a pretty good guess that they will actually turn up to Catalonia with a different livery. Also, they've still got they tweeted out a picture of the trucks outside Silverstone, and the trucks will still have the usual red and yellow livery on the trucks. So maybe that's a sign of that they are definitely going to change to a more kind of natural Red Bull livery, but we'll see. But let me know in the comments below. If you're new around here, do get subscribed for more F1 content. I will be doing this style of video for every single launch, and of course, if you look around my channel page, you'll see I do daily F1 content on the F1 game, and also some more stuff to do with real life. We do a podcast as well, so do get subscribed for all of that good stuff. Do leave a like if you found the video informative or just like the livery, and let me know what you think about it in the comments below, as I said. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.